And good evening, and welcome to this webinar on how to approach GMAT sentence correction. In this webinar, we look at the meaning-based approach to solve the easiest to the most challenging sentence correction questions that the test can throw at you. My name is Rajat Sidana. I'm one of the co-founders of e-GMAT, and I will be your co-host today. Along with me, I have Payal Tandon, who's the other co-founder of e-GMAT, and she's going to be our main host today. Supporting us in this webinar, we have Sandeep, who's a GMAT strategy expert, as well as Shraddha, who's a GMAT subject matter expert. And they'll make sure that every question that you have gets answered during this webinar. So this is a fairly application-focused webinar, and to make sure that you guys are able to apply the methods that we talk about in this webinar, we did send a few video lessons your way, primarily on verb ing modifiers and verb ed phrases. If you've not gone through these video lessons, they are a part of your free trial. To get the most out of this webinar, definitely go through these video lessons post this webinar. Also, we have some upcoming free webinars. We have a free webinar on number properties, which is tomorrow again, hosted by Payal Tandon as well. And if you've not gone through the prerequisites, I'd recommend register for this, get the prerequisites, and go through this and attend this webinar tomorrow. And then we have a webinar on GMAT reading comprehension that is next Saturday, the 9th of March. We have about 150 students in this webinar, and to make sure that we address the needs of these students, we ask a few leading questions. One of them is, when do you plan to take the test? The other is, what's your target GMAT score? Most of you have responded to the first one, which is, when do you plan to take the test? And based on the data that I see over here, we have a fairly decent mix. About half of you have more than 45 days before the test. And then in those who have between 15 to 45 days, again, we have a fairly healthy mix. So we have folks from every stage of preparation over here. Also, with regards to the target GMAT score, I see that about 55% of you or 57% of you are aiming for a score of 730 or higher, a fairly healthy number of you in the 710, 720 bracket, and then about 17% of you are at 700 or lower. Really good. It gets us, it helps us understand the makeup of this entire group, what is it that you're aspiring for, etc. So now we are in the presentation pod, or the presentation window, and the screen will have changed for you, or will be in the process of changing for you. I'm going to give you guys another 10 to 15 seconds so that the screen does change for you. All right. There are essentially three parts of this webinar. In the first part, we'll give a brief introduction to the company. That's going to be the last, 15 to 16 minutes. Then Payal would take over, where we'll go right into the core of this session. That's going to be about 105 minutes or so. And then towards the end, if you still have questions that have not been responded to, or questions that are a bit more personal in nature, which may pertain to just your preparation, or then we would love to answer those questions, as long as they are in the last part of the webinar, which is the open-ended Q&A. Also, if you have questions about business school, or how do you approach your B school application, we can answer those, as long as they are you pose those questions in this open-ended Q&A portion. With that, let's kind of get into the first part of this webinar, which is an introduction to e-GMAT. So earlier I asked this question, what's your target GMAT score? And about 55% of you aimed for, or are aiming for, a score of 730 or higher. While about 55% of you are aiming for that score, what I can tell you is that statistically, only 6% of the people score 720 or higher. And this is despite the fact that median scores at top B schools keep on going up. So this data that you see over here for Wharton, Dodden, and Columbia is from second half of last year. You can see some of these data points being reported on MBA.com. So what is it that people who get to that 720 or higher score do? A good percentage of them use e-GMAT. Why do we say that? When you look at some of the stats on leading forums such as Beat the GMAT and GMAT Club, you'd actually arrive at the same conclusion. The first stat that I want to draw your attention to is is a verified reviews. Uh, so so when you look at the number of verified reviews for e-GMAT versus those for the other top test prep companies, what you're going to find is that there are more verified reviews for e-GMAT over the last 3 years than have been posted for all the other major prep companies combined. When you look at the number of success stories that mention e-GMAT versus the other prep companies over the last 12 months, that is, you're going to rarely find a very similar story. So what is it that makes our students more successful? I think there's one thing that makes our students more successful, that is, it is our approach to GMAT preparation. And when you think about our approach, you've got to understand what are the various approaches to GMAT preparation that exists, and the approaches to GMAT preparation can be mapped to what we call as architectures of learning. So when you look at the classical architectures of learning that exist today, there are two predominant architectures. One is the book-based architecture of learning, and the other is the private tutoring-based approach. When you look at most of the other major prep companies, you'd find that despite the fact that they provide audio-visual instruction, they have quizzes and other things, their core architecture is based very much on that book-based architecture. And when you map e-GMAT to the various learning architectures, what you're going to find is it's based a lot more on that private tutoring based architecture. So let's see why is it that one architecture is much better at helping you ace the GMAT, and how is it that e-GMAT's different from all of these other prep companies. So to do that, let's map a journey of a student, and let's map the journey of a student who wants to go from a score of 600 to a 720 score. So if you want to go from a 600 to a 720, the first thing you've got to do is you've got to create a path towards your goal. You've got to figure out how is that journey towards that 720 score going to look for you. Then you have to isolate the areas that you need to work on and build the conceptual knowledge in areas where you actually lack that. Knowing the concepts isn't enough. You also need to know how to apply those concepts, and then you've got to get so good at applying those concepts that you are among those top 6 percentile of students worldwide. Now, let's see how a book-based approach approaches this problem. So a book-based approach is all about autonomy. So when you start reading from a book, you may get a few cookie-cutter study plans, but none of them is personalized to you, and you have to choose one of the study plans that makes sense to you. Then once you choose a certain set of study plans, you basically decide to study concepts. Now, there are a number of books that provide comprehensive learning environment to learn concepts, but whether you've learned those concepts or not is something that you as a student needs to decide. One area where books don't do as great a job is teaching you how to apply concepts. Books may provide practice problems, but they don't really tell you when you approach a problem, what should you do in step 1, what should you do in step 2, step 3, and so on and so forth. They also don't point out when you make a mistake in a particular step. Consequently, people who study using books, they do hundreds and hundreds of problems to master application. Now, a few do, but most people don't master application to that 90 percentile level or so. And similarly, when it comes to evaluation of mastery, people who follow a book-based approach take tens of marks to figure out whether they've actually attained that level, which puts them in the top 6 percentile or not. A private tutoring-based approach works very differently. The first thing when you start working with a private tutor, or a good private tutor would do, is create a personalized study plan for you. And that study plan is based on your current strengths, your weaknesses, the amount of time you can spend today, etc., etc. Once a private tutor creates that study plan, and that process today I think takes between 1 to 2 hours, a private tutor would start teaching you concepts, and while he or she is teaching you concepts, he'd evaluate you on your ability, on your mastery of that concept. Similarly, with applying those concepts, the private tutor would tell you what should you do in step 1, step 2, step 3, and so on and so forth. And essentially, while you're applying those concepts, a private tutor constantly evaluates you to really see whether you've attained that level of mastery, so that you can move from one topic to the other. So how are these two approaches different? While you learn the same content in each of these approaches, the extent of personalization, the extent of feedback is much more in a private tutor-based approach, and you can really see why that approach is more successful than just a book-based approach. So let's see, why do we say that most of the others prep courses out there are designed around the book-based approach, whereas e-GMAT's designed around this private tutor-based approach. And again, let's take the same example where you want to go from a score of 600 to 720. Now remember, the first step is to create that personalized study plan, and to help you do that, we've actually last week released an AI-based utility that allows everyone to create their personalized study plan. We call it PSP, or Personalized Study Planner. Now, how do you create your personalized study plan? The first thing that you do is you put in what your current scores are. So what you can really see is a step-by-step. The utility has a step-by-step workflow. It takes your current scores into account. Now, over here, for a score of 600, this person has a Q44 and a V28, and you may really see that both of them are around that 50 percentile scores. But because this is an AI powered utility, it understands that from an ability standpoint, a Q44 means a lot higher ability than a V28, and it takes that into account. Now, once you have that, it suggests a target quant and a target verbal milestone for you. This is how do you get to that 720 score. Now, if this particular student was better in verbal than in quant, then these quant and verbal milestones would be different. So, but given the starting point of the student, the utility looked into various ways to get to a 720 and recommended this path, because it realized that when it comes to the likelihood of success, when it comes to the amount of time required to prepare, this is the shortest path to get to that 720 score. Then from there on, it also provides you milestones to reach that 720 score. So for example, for quant, it recommends an 83 percentile in arithmetic and 83 percentile in algebra and geometry. And for verbal, it recommends the corresponding percentiles. And again, these are recommended based on the likelihood of success, your starting percentiles in these areas, as well as the amount of time required. So when you do something like this, your overall GMAT preparation looks like this, where you have your starting score and your target score, but you also have your starting abilities in quant. You can see Q44 is 59 percentile in algebra, and 39%, 59% in arithmetic, I'm sorry, and 39% in algebra, and the target milestones over here. The same thing on the verbal side of things as well, where you have the starting abilities and you have the ending target abilities or milestones that you have to achieve. Now, once you do that, this utility then takes into account the amount of time you can put in every day. So when you think about your GMAT preparation, here are the top 3 or 4 questions that people really have. One of them is, hey, when can I take the test? The second is the order in which I should study. What's the order in which I should study? How much time should I put in every day? And when do I, how do I know that I've learned enough? And when you think about this screen, this is a screen which is from that personalized study plan. It gives you all of those things. It tells you your starting abilities. It tells you your target milestones or target abilities that you need to really get to. It tells you how much time you should study. So over here, you need to study for 1.4 weeks given the amount of time you can put in every day, and to go from that 59 percentile to 83rd percentile. In algebra, because you're starting at a lower ability, you can see the time is slightly more, and the same thing over here. It also tells you when can you take the test. If you have that question, hey, when can you take the test? It tells you that, and these milestones outline how your score will improve, how your journey would look like as you go from that 600 to that 720 score. So when you do all of this, your personalized GMAT preparation looks like, hey, I need to improve my sentence correction from 50 to 89 percentile, and I need to spend 1.5 weeks doing that, and so on and so forth. It's no longer a black box in which you're studying. It's a set of 5 neatly defined milestones with well allocated timelines to those milestones. Not only that, it also gives you a calendar view of of your preparation. And in this view, what you can customize it to really say, hey, here are certain days when I cannot study, and you can really say, I'm going to put in 0 hours. The utility automatically adjusts the dates for you. And again, this is your preparation. It's the amount of time you can study on weekdays, amount of time you can study on weekends. All of that's taken into account. So the reason we spend 1,000 hours building this utility is so that you can create your study plan in less than 5 minutes. This process used to take people an hour to an hour and a half working with private tutor, paying $100 or more per hour or so. Now you can do that in 7 minutes or less. So that's study plan. Then you can really see the granularity to which we provide study plans to you and which are personalized to you. Okay, let's talk about learning concepts now. And so remember, a private tutor teaches you concepts and gives you feedback every step of the way. This is a screenshot from our subject verb module, and what you really see is you see audiovisual concepts being taught to you. And with every concept, we give you feedback, and this feedback is personalized to how well you've learned that particular concept. Now, let's compare how other prep companies approach this. This is the same subject verb module from Magoosh course. Excuse me. What you really see over here is this is really a bunch of lessons. There is no feedback over here. This time that you see is not the time that you spent on it. It's the length of the video essentially. Also, another thing that you can notice is that the breadth of coverage is not even comparable. The next thing after teaching concepts is that the private tutor teaches you how to apply those concepts. And to do that, we build this entity called an application file in which we teach you what do you do in step 1, what do you do in step 2, so on and so forth. Then we evaluate you over there, and then we give you a set of targeted official questions in which you can apply this learning. And this is how every module, whether it's a subject verb, modifiers, verbs, etc., is structured within the e-GMAT course. Compare that to the Magoosh course. What you're going to find is that there is no application. There's just one practice quiz which caters to subject verb, auxiliary verbs, pronouns, and again there's no score over here. Again, the intent is to give you just practice and not to provide feedback. The intent is completely different. While teaching you concepts, while teaching you application, a private tutor also ensures or evaluates you constantly so that he or she can recommend when can you move on from one topic to another, when can you move on from subject verb to modifiers or sentence correction to critical reasoning. Now, the reason this is important is because your goal is to get to that 90 percentile level. You're not just studying sentence correction to finish the sentence correction portion of the GMAT, but you're studying sentence correction to get to that 90 percentile ability. If you don't get there, you don't get to that 720 score. And to ensure that you can evaluate yourself, we build this product called Scholarium, which has ability quizzes built in it. So after you go through the sentence correction course, or most of it, you can take an ability quiz and it'll tell you what your ability score is. It'll also tell you if you haven't hit that 90 percentile, which are the areas that you need to work on. And in this case, comparison is clearly an area where that you need to work on. So while both the approaches teach you the same content, it's the extent of personalization, the extent of application that you learn, and the kind of feedback that you get that makes one approach a lot more successful than the other. Who's created this content? Some of GMAT Club's top rated instructors have created this content, and in fact, we're bringing more and more top-rated instructors to you as a part of the e-GMAT team. We'll soon be introducing a few top-rated instructors who are among the highest-paid instructors in the country to help you ace the GMAT. These instructors have been reviewed a lot more heavily on GMAT Club. And again, you can go there, read their reviews. So while only 6% of the people score 720 or higher, a good percentage of them do use e-GMAT. With that, I'm very happy to announce that we are starting our batch calendar for a March 2nd batch today. You guys can download that calendar over here. And with that, I've come to the end of my introduction. If you want to stay updated with all things e-GMAT, if you want to learn about the new utilities that we release, you can connect with me on my LinkedIn. There are upwards of 10,000 students connected with me on my LinkedIn. With that, I'd like to invite Payal to start the second part of this webinar, which is how do you ace GMAT sentence correction by leveraging meaning and logic.
Good morning, good evening, and hello everyone. My name is Payal Tandon and I will be your host for this part of the webinar. Let's just make sure that all of you can hear me loud and clear. Can you please press yes if my voice is absolutely clear? Sounds good. And thank you, Rajat, for that wonderful introduction. We are all really excited about the launch of Personalized Study Planner, and we urge all of you to take a look at that and then make sure that you get a solid study plan your way before you get deep into your preparation. All right, so let's get started with sentence correction. How are we going to carry on with this session? So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to discuss what is your current approach towards sentence correction. For this, I'm going to be asking you a few questions and we're going to be analyzing your responses to those questions. And we'll come to a certain conclusion that all of us agree with. Then we're going to talk about what is actually important to master sentence correction. And for this, we are again going to take a few examples. You're going to solve those questions, and I'll make sure that that I'm able to communicate to you as to what is actually important to master sentence correction. Because till the time we don't know what's important, it's difficult for us to come up with a plan to actually execute in order to get there. All right. So those are the three things that we're going to do in this webinar. So with that, let's get started with the first part, wherein I'll try to understand what your current approach towards sentence correction is. So here is a question that you see on your screen, and I want you to read that question and select the appropriate choice here. So in your opinion, what do you think is the most critical to master sentence correction? Is it knowing the grammar rules? Is it efficiently finding patterns in choices? Or is it understanding the meaning? Let's get a few more responses. All right, so an overwhelming majority has selected understanding meaning as the single most thing, which is the most critical in order to master sentence correction, about 73% of the class. And then almost equal votes for knowing grammar rules and efficiently finding patterns in answer choices. All right, well and good. Now, here comes your second question. You all have been preparing for SC, or at least you are introduced to what sentence correction questions are. So when you actually sit down to solve a sentence correction question, how do you split your time among choices? And there are 5 answer choices. So how do you split your time among choices? All right, broadcast the results. So what you see over here is very interesting. 76% of the class has selected choice number 2, that I eliminate some wrong answers first and then I equally split my time in evaluating the remaining choices. About 15% of the class has selected choice 3, I spend more than half my time in analyzing choice A. So essentially what's going on is that 75% of the class believes that understanding the meaning of the sentence is the most critical. However, if I make a statement right now that if you were able to truly translate this aspect into action, you should have selected choice number 3 over here. That is, you should spend more than half of your time in analyzing choice A. So clearly there is a disconnect. Okay, because majority of you actually spend time in doing the action as per choice number 2. So why is there this disconnect? And we're going to be talking about that. But let's first understand, what does this disconnect mean? You know that meaning is important, but you don't know how to implement that aspect in your approach. And that is why there is a disconnect in what you think is most important and how do you implement that in your approach while you're solving an essay question. Okay. So what am I going to do in order to take care of that? What I'm going to do is I'm going to first tell you, what do I mean by meaning in sentence correction? Okay, what do I mean by that? Okay, I'm going to help you understand that. Then I'm going to explain to you, why do I say that we need to spend more than half of our time on choice A? Because I understand you must be thinking, we have 5 choices. How does that make sense that I spend half of my time on just a single choice? And that's a very, very valid question. Okay, and I am going to explain why do I say that you need to spend more than half of your time on choice A. And then we're going to talk about the timing aspect of it, which is also a very, very obvious doubt that will come in your head, that it's a timed test, right? And why are you saying that, how would you justify the spending of majority of my time on choice A, right? So I'm going to be talking about that aspect as well. And then towards the end, once I've convinced you on the first 3 points, I'm then going to give you a plan of action that incorporates those 3 points so that you get a plan such that you can get to that 90 percentile ability in sentence correction. All right. So with this, let's get started with the first part over here in understanding what is the role of meaning in sentence correction. So what I'm going to show you next is a single question. It has 5 choices, but it's a very, very simple question. And I'm going to give you the poll here. So read the question and select the answer choice that you think is the correct answer choice. I won't time you. As soon as about 50% of the class has selected the response, I'm going to give you a 10-second warning. And actually before that, can you all please click on still solving over here? That way I know how many people are actively engaged in the question. All right, I have about 211 people in the session, so let's get this number to at least 100. All right, let's get started. Go ahead. All right, last 10 seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. So the correct answer here is choice D, and 84% of the class has selected that. And again, this was an easy question, just getting your feet wet with what sentence correction is all about. Now, what I'm going to do is, even though it's an easy question, I'm going to be solving this question the way I solve any sentence correction question. Okay, so the first thing that I do is I look at the original sentence in its entirety and I understand the meaning that the author intends to communicate from the original sentence. So let's look at that. Samuel has decided to allocate more time for his GMAT preparation, even though he getting additional responsibilities at work. So even though I can tell that, okay, the sentence has some grammatical issue, I can still understand the meaning of the sentence. What the author is trying to say is, yes, responsibilities at work have increased. Despite that, this guy Sam, he has decided to spend more time on GMAT, on his GMAT prep. And again, this is a context which is very, very close to us. We can very easily understand it. The sentence structure is very simple. So yeah, pretty easy to understand the meaning. So now, now I figure out, okay, what is wrong with this choice? And I know that, okay, there's this grammar error because there's no verb for the subject he over here because he because getting is not it cannot be a verb. So I know this choice is wrong. I know the meaning of this of the author, and now the meaning that the author wants to communicate. Now I take a look at my answer choices. I look at choice B. Now choice B, there is no grammatical error in choice B, but the meaning has been distorted. Why? Because there is no contrast now presented in the original in this choice. Simply, there are two facts that have been presented. Now, it's up to the reader to read those two facts and infer, okay, there could be some contrast here. That doesn't kind of make sense. That's not very logical, is what I would say. So again, but the author has not explicitly stated the contrast in choice B, which is different from what he did in choice A, and that's why choice B is wrong. Let's look at choice C. Choice C, it's very distorted. And there is that slight grammatical error here as well. Samuel has decided when he gets responsibilities, it's a little bit off in terms of the sequencing. But even if you don't go to that grammatical error, you can tell just by reading this choice that there is this change in the meaning. Now the author, now this answer choice links the two in a timing relationship, and that's very illogical, and that's very different from the contrast that the author intended to communicate through choice A. Choice D is absolutely correct. Now here the sentence structure has changed. This choice eliminates the need to even have a verb here because it's simply saying despite getting additional responsibilities at work. So sorry. So the sentence structure has changed, but the meaning is pretty intact. It's grammatically correct. So choice D is the correct answer. Choice E, again, it's a change in meaning, and it is the causal relationship is not what the author intended to communicate. So, in this question, this what we have seen is that meaning can be distorted in various ways, right? We were able to distort the meaning by removing the contrast altogether, by introducing a timing relationship, by introducing a causal relationship. Okay. Now there may be certain minor grammatical errors in these choices as well, right? But if you focus on these hard meaning-based issues, it's going to be very, very straightforward for you to eliminate answer choices. So when you're looking at an SC question, for you, the most important thing should be to understand what the author intends to communicate and make sure that the answer choice that you select does not distort that intended meaning. Okay. So this is why you really need to focus on understanding the meaning of the sentence. And now we are going to apply this understanding on an official question, which is again an easy official question. But when I show you an official question, you can see this entire action, this entire meaning-based play in action. Okay, so here is your question. I'm going to eliminate. So before I show you the question, let's get to the right poll. And if you can all select still solving, I'd really appreciate that. Just a few more to take it up to 100, more than 100. All right, sounds good. There you go. Last few seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. So 63% of the class has selected choice B as the correct answer, and that is indeed the correct answer. All right, so how many of you were able to see a semblance between the two questions? Not many of you. Okay, all right. Okay, so how many of you were able to apply the process here? Focus on the meaning first and then take a look at the answer choices. Okay, good, well and good. Now, what is the meaning of this sentence? What is the author trying to tell you? Imagine that I haven't read this sentence and just give me a gist. The population of wolf is dependent on the number of prey, the number of prey that's available in the area. Absolutely right. Okay. What else? The other thing is that how does this link to the state wildlife official's job aspect that was presented in the question? So essentially what this is saying is that next month, so let's look at the meaning of the sentence in detail. Next month, state wildlife officials are scheduled to take over the job. Now, whenever I read a sentence, I actually pause at multiple points, okay, so that I make sure that I understand everything that the author is trying to communicate. So over here, I pause at this point because I know beyond this, the author is explaining what the job is. So let me first understand whatever the author has said till now. Next month, state wildlife officials, so next month something is going to happen. State wildlife officials are scheduled to take over certain jobs. So certain people are scheduled to take over a certain job. Now I start to read further. Job of what? Job of increasing the wolf population in the federally designated recovery area. So I pause here again. So job of increasing population of wolf in a certain recovery area, right? The number of which will, however, ultimately be dictated by the number of prey in the area. Now, the number of which, what does that tell? The number of which is what? So what does that explain to me? The number of which. Okay. I think there is some problem with the screen here, and it's kind of okay. Let's see what's going on over here. Okay, give me a minute, guys. For some reason, I'm not able to move this short answer poll. Let me just take a look at what you guys are seeing. So give me just 1 second. All right. Is that better now? Yes. Is that better? Okay. I don't know why in my view I was seeing the that question poll on one side of the screen only, but yes, I could see that in your view it was grabbing the entire thing. All right. Sorry about that. I'm not sure why that happened, but now that we've taken care of it, that's good. Let me get that poll once again and shorten that up. Hopefully it should not create problems now. Okay. Is it again creating trouble? Can you see the screen? All right. How about now? Is that okay? Okay. Let me create another poll because I do want to hear you as well. So let me just change the poll here. All right, let's see now. All right, perfect. Thank you so much. I apologize for that, but it's all good now. Thank you. Okay, so let's come back to this question. Um, so the number of which, what does the number of which imply? What does that refer to, the number of which? Logically, it refers to the wolves. Absolutely right. The number of which will, however, ultimately be dictated by the number of prey in the area. So this sentence, would you agree that it presents a contrast? Would you agree with that? The sentence presents a contrast? Yes. And what is the contrast? The contrast is that, yes, next month these officials will be given responsibility to increase the number of wolves in a certain area. But the reality is that the number of prey in that area would actually govern the number of wolves. So that's the reality, right? So now I have a question here. Was confused whether population was about number of officials or wolves. Well, population, the number of which will, however, again, you have to go by the logic aspect of it, right? The author is talking about increasing the number of wolves. So the next part of the sentence will also be about the population of wolves. The other thing is number of prey in the area. Prey is related to the wolves. You know, the humans are not going to eat the prey, right? So again, you have to go by the logic aspect of the sentence. Okay. So let's now look at the errors in the sentence. Now I understand the meaning of the sentence, right? As I was reading the sentence, there was this thing, the number of which will, however, ultimately be dictated. Now, logically, as a number of you said, which refers to wolves. However, grammatically, because wolf is not a noun, which cannot refer to wolves. Okay, because wolf has been used as an adjective in this sentence. Okay, so really speaking, what we have done over here is we have recognized that there is a pronoun error in this sentence, and we arrived at that analysis only after we understood what the author was intending to communicate. What does the author want to tell us? Okay, so we understood that first. Then we looked at, okay, is the author, yes, I understand what the author is trying to tell me, but is he doing that in grammatically correct fashion? And in this case, we recognize that no, the author is not doing that in a grammatically correct fashion. Okay, so really speaking, at a very high level, uh, once you understand the roles played by each and every entity in the sentence, for you to do the error analysis, which is step number 2 in our process, it becomes a cakewalk because you've understood how these different parts of the sentence are actually linked together. Okay? Now, all right, I have a question. How is wolves an adjective? Can you please elaborate on that? So, I won't go into too much of detail, but just to mention that over here, uh, increasing the wolf population. So wolf is increasing some kind of population. Population is a noun here. What kind of population? Population, the wolf population. So wolf is describing the population, okay, in this sentence. And that's why which cannot refer to wolf because wolf is an adjective. Okay. All right, so now we take a look at the answer choices. Choice number B is absolutely correct. Now there is a difference in sentence structure, right? Now there is another clause over here which has been connected appropriately. The pronoun which has been removed completely. Now the author says the size of the population, and that is the correct way of expressing this thing, and everything else in the sentence is correct. Now look at choice C. Choice C, When, however, the number of volts will. Now, when always presents a timing relationship. Okay, so using when over here distorts the meaning. Okay, so that is why this choice is wrong. The number of which will, however, now in this choice, choice D, there is choice D is again wrong because it has the same issue as we had in choice A, right? Choice E, but the size of population. Now here, from meaning perspective, we are okay. However, there is an issue with the connection perspective. Okay, you cannot use but to connect the other clause with a semicolon. You cannot use a semicolon to connect two clauses, one of which has but. Okay, you should have used comma over here. So that's why choice E is wrong. So again, long story short, as you understand the meaning of the sentence, you are able to identify the errors. As you identify the errors, when you come to look at the answer choices, you not only have grammatical issues at play in order for you to reject answer choices, you also can utilize meaning issues in order to eliminate answer choices. And in this case, there was a very stark meaning difference between the two choices as we saw over here. Okay, so again, it's very, very important to focus on the meaning aspect of the sentence. Okay, thoroughly understand the meaning of the original sentence so that you don't struggle when you see answer choices that may not have those glaring grammatical errors, because not every time you can identify all the grammatical issues in a sentence. But for you, because we all have that logical bent of mind, for us to identify logical shifts in meaning will come a lot more naturally as compared to identifying all those nuanced grammatical errors. Is this point clear? Yes or no? Okay, good. Any comments so far about the approach? Anything that stands out till now? Again, we have solved very simple questions till now, but from the approach standpoint, because that's what my goal is, for you to understand the approach and to imbibe that approach so that you can incorporate that approach in your plan. All right, good. Makes a lot more sense. It's good. So far looks pleasant. All right, that's what I was looking for. That sounds good. Okay. Um, Now, here is an example of one of the many students who benefited from this focus on meaning. Because one thing that I've realized is I can tell you all about meaning-based approach or pre-thinking approach for CR or applying reading strategies for RC or applying a step-by-step process for quant, but till the time you don't hear it from a person who has been in your shoes, it's difficult for you to cross that barrier of change, right? So that's why I tend to incorporate these stories in my session so that you, alongside of my telling you why this approach works, you listen from other people as well for whom this approach has worked wonders. Okay, so Nishant, before using the meaning-based approach, struggled to finish verbal section on time. This was despite him knowing all sentence correction rules. He was aware of everything that's related to grammar, that you're required to know for GMAT. But once Nishant embraced this approach, he realized that he was naturally able to solve sentence correction questions with high accuracy in 45 seconds or fewer. Nishant was admitted to Ohio Fisher with full fellowship, even though he applied very late in the process, almost in round 3. And the reason that I love this story is because here is this guy who was stuck at 570 and was wondering whether he would even be able to get into any B school. And in the end, with all his hard work and with the right approach, he was not only able to get into the B school that's highly ranked in operations management, but was also able to secure a full fellowship. He's also written an amazing debrief on GMAT Club, which I urge all of you to go through. But let's just read through one line over here. When I shifted from classroom self-study coaching preparation to e-GMAT, the focus on solving problems by understanding the meaning of the sentence was time-consuming. Okay, but soon I picked up the trick and was able to solve essay questions in 45 seconds. So the thing over here is, I'm not claiming that as soon as you start applying meaning-based approach, you will be able to solve questions in under 60 seconds right away. No. Initially, it will be time consuming. I'm making that statement because that's a fact. It is going to be time consuming initially. But as you train your mind to think about SC questions in this approach, you are going to get to a certain point wherein you will be able to intuitively apply this approach and solve SC questions with high accuracy and in under 60 seconds. Okay. Now, what's interesting about Nishant's ESR is when you download his ESR, what you're going to find is that he scored 94 percentile in sentence correction, and that's the highest amongst any of his other sections. Now, Samya, that's another story that I want to share with you right now. She's an individual who sets very high standards for herself. She works at McKinsey. She's been a topper all her life. And she still struggled to score 760. And she really struggled with sentence correction. She just could not figure out why in some sentence correction questions certain answer choices were incorrect and how to arrive at the correct answer in a definitive manner. You know, when you mark a certain answer choice and you feel that okay, you weren't able to reject the other answer choices with that much more clarity, you feel, oh my god, am I doing the right thing? You get into that self doubt, and that self doubt creates that negative feedback in your loop and you do, in your mind, and you don't want that negative feedback going on when you're taking that 3.5 hour long grueling GMAT test. Okay, so it's not only important for you to understand this approach and embrace this approach to solve a single SC questions. It's very, very important for you to do that because you want to make sure that you are in that stable mindset throughout, in that positive mindset throughout your GMAT exam. Now, because of this problem, her score was stuck in 700s. She realized that she needed to take a look at sentence correction in a completely different light. And it was then that she discovered focus on meaning through this very webinar. And once Samya enhanced her approach, she realized that she could get to the correct answer in a definitive manner by simply focusing on meaning. It is this confidence that propped her GMAT score to 780 with a better than 99 percentile on GMAT verbal. All right, so with this, let's get to another question. Now, this question is a difficult one. The first two were easy one, just trying to get your feet wet with the approach and with sentence correction questions. Now, this one is a difficult one. So take your time. I'm not going to time you guys. Take as much time as you need. Click on still solving right now so that I know how many people are actively engaged with the question. And I'll give you a 30-second warning when about 50% of the class has put in the responses. So let's get this to about 100. So what I want you to do over here is, I want you to read the sentence to understand what the sentence intends to communicate. While you're doing that, I also want you to understand, if you're not able to put together the entire meaning, at least understand each and every part of the sentence. Okay, the sentence is a long sentence. Just understand what is the role played by each and every part of the sentence. Essentially, as I'm giving you a hint, you can split the sentence into, let's say, about 4 or 5 different parts. Okay, so understand the roles played by each and every part. With that understanding, then try to put together the meaning and then take that into your error analysis and then take that aspect into your choice analysis. Okay, so let's get going here. There you go. All right, last 30 seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. And yes, I had left the question poll, answer poll open, so I apologize for that. And I can see that there has been some impact in the answer choice selection. Usually this question gets about 50 to 55% accuracy. Today I can see the accuracy has bumped up to 65%. So I'm sure that when you saw the people selecting choice B, you were kind of tempted to select choice B as well. So for how many people did that happen? How many of you got tempted to select choice B because you saw that, some people have selected that? Oh, it didn't happen for many people. Good. That means you have embraced the process well. That's good. All right. So let's go into this question. All right. So how was this question? Let's talk about that. Okay. One small clarification that I want to make is, if you have any questions regarding the questions that have already been discussed, please put them in the Q&A pod so that Shraddha can answer those questions. Okay, because I keep deleting the responses in short answer poll, so I don't want your question to go unanswered. So please put those in the Q&A pod. All right, so meaning-based approach is great. Yeah, that's music to my ears. That's really good to hear. Quite a handful, a bit tough, very long. I understand the meaning, but I chose the wrong answer. Not a problem. We're going to go through why that happened. I got confused between B and E. All right, confusing a little bit. Okay, let's read some other. I felt it was focused more on meaning than SC questions usually are. Okay, I will address that aspect. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to first understand the meaning of the sentence. Okay, because diegetic music, comma. Now, comma usually act as point of pause, because whenever you see a comma, there is always that shift. There's always that something else that's coming about, right? So it's a good place to pause. Because diegetic music, so because has been used, which means there is a causal relationship here. So there should be some cause and effect mentioned in the sentence. Because diegetic music actively referenced in the film rather than confined to the background. Now, this part here, actively referenced in the film rather than confined to the background, what does this explain? What does this explain? This explains diegetic music, right? So, because diegetic music actively referenced in the film. Now, what is it telling you? It's telling that diegetic music is actively referenced in the film. It's used actively in the film rather than being confined, but rather than being just stuck in the background. Okay, so we understand that. Invoking a sense of verisimilitude. Now, invoking a sense of verisimilitude, what is this talking about? What's the role of this part? This part is also describing diegetic music. Absolutely right. The diegetic music invokes a sense of verisimilitude, invokes something. Now, we don't know what verisimilitude means, but that should not bother us because it's the author actually has explained that. Okay. The idea that art can express a truthful version of reality. Now, what is verisimilitude? Verisimilitude is the idea that a form of art can be used to express something that has already happened, something that is reality. Okay, so everything under, so essentially, if you think about it, these two aspects, actively referenced in the film and invoking a sense of verisimilitude, would you agree that these are two aspects, two characteristics of diegetic music? Would you agree with that? Yes, these are two characteristics of diegetic music. Okay, so the author has given some descriptive information about diegetic music. Then next, the author says filmmakers creating period dramas use it often. Now, this part of the sentence by itself is pretty straightforward. Filmmakers, which kind of filmmakers? The ones who create period dramas, create historical dramas, use it often. Now, what is it? It is diegetic music. Okay, so very straightforward thing. But when you were reading this sentence, did you feel that, till this point, I'm reading all about diegetic music, all of a sudden my subject has changed, the author is now talking about filmmakers, and I don't see much of a linkage between these two aspects. Did you guys feel that way? How many of you felt that way? So a number of you felt that way. And it's absolutely fine to feel that way because the author has not written the sentence in a grammatically correct form. So one thing that I would tell you is if you focus on meaning like this, in this manner, a number of grammatical errors will just come out shouting at you that look, I'm not written in a correct manner, because the sentence itself is going to tell you that, because right now the author messed up a bit here. The author said there was some kind of cause and effect in the beginning of the sentence, but he failed to mention the effect here. Okay. He, again, there is no, I don't know how the filmmakers aspect about filmmakers is linked to diegetic music. Okay. The author has failed to tell me that. So I can definitely conclude that the meaning of the sentence is not clear. But the thing that I have to do is, it's okay for the meaning to not be clear, but in our approach, we need to understand each and every part of the sentence. And that's what we did. We understood, even though they were not linked properly to each other, to one another, we still understood what they as a standalone sentence, a standalone part were communicating. Okay. Now, once we do that, then we infer the logical meaning of the sentence. Okay. Essentially, if you think about it, you're talking about music. You're talking about filmmakers using this music because of certain attributes. Now, and you already know that there are two attributes here. This is attribute number one, this is attribute number two, right? So, and you know that there is a causal relationship here, right? So you have a number of pieces. So think about it as a puzzle that you need to put together, right? You know all the different pieces. You just have to make sure that you put those pieces of puzzle together. Okay, so you can definitely say that filmmakers creating period dramas use diegetic music often. Why? Because diegetic music invokes a sense of verisimilitude. What is verisimilitude? That art can express reality. Okay, so because of this factor number two, filmmakers who create period dramas use diegetic music often. Okay, so I have put together the meaning of this sentence by simply applying my logical understanding of the sentence and by having trust in the author that, okay, yes, he wants to communicate a logical meaning, but he just messed up somewhere while putting the sentence together. But his individual parts make sense as they stand independently. Okay, so now I move on to my identification of errors, and frankly, identification of errors becomes really straightforward. I know I've already figured out what the intended meaning is, and I simply can tell that, okay, invoking should have been the verb invokes. Okay, so now with this understanding, I take a look at my other answer choices. Now what my job is to think about, okay, now in this sentence, look at the answer choices. The sentence is completely underlined, right? Now, whenever you have a completely underlined sentence, you can be rest assured that you are going to see multiple sentence structures. Okay, and that's where, and this should not bog you down. In fact, I consider that as a good news, because as long as I understand various parts of the sentence and what they mean, for me to now evaluate answer choices, all it requires is to make sure that I select the answer choice that has put together all those parts in the correct manner, in the manner that I can understand what the meaning is. Okay, so now I take a look at choice B. Actively referenced in the film rather than confined to the background. Now this modifier was in the middle of the sentence in choice A, but now it is at the beginning. But I know the role that this modifier plays. It describes diegetic music. So as long as the choice has put together that in making sure that it communicates that role, that it still plays that role correctly, that choice should be good. Diegetic music, absolutely right, is often used by filmmakers creating period dramas. This is also the meaning that was there because it invokes a sense of verisimilitude, the idea that art can express a truthful version of reality. So this choice is absolutely correct. It has explained, it has put together all the parts of the sentence in the correct manner. Okay? All right. The filmmakers creating period dramas, so choice B is correct. Now I have a question here. After B, it is the idea. It should be which is the grammar structure for the idea. Okay, so again, the student is asking what is the grammatical structure followed here. Good question. This structure is called as noun plus noun modifier. Okay, so here this noun, the idea is modifying verisimilitude. Okay, so we have a complete, so we have a full concept file on this. So in our sentence correction course, so I would request you to go through that concept file. So yeah, but this is the noun plus noun modifier that's modifying verisimilitude here. Okay, all right, so let's look at choice C. Filmmakers creating period dramas often use diegetic music, which invokes a sense of verisimilitude. So far, so good. However, this aspect over here should have created some kind of a should have rung a bell in your head, because now which invokes has been used as a descriptive information. Okay, it's not used as the reason for why the filmmakers use diegetic music. So this itself is wrong here. It doesn't communicate the intended meaning. But what it does, but it's okay to go through the entire sentence. You should in fact do that because it is actively referenced in the film rather than confined to the background. So here the causal relationship is not what we inferred the causal relationship to be, what the logical causal relationship is. Okay, and that's why this choice is wrong. Now grammatically there isn't much wrong in this choice. In fact, what I would say is, even if there was some nuanced grammatical error, I would actually say, even if you're not able to identify that, if you focus on these big meaning shifts, it's going to be a lot more easy for you to solve SC questions in an accurate manner, accurately all the time. Okay, so choice C is wrong because of this meaning shift issue. Filmmakers who create period dramas, let's look at choice D, using diegetic music, since it is music actively referenced. Here also you can tell the same thing, the cause has been moved. The cause is not the same as it was, as it is intended. Okay, so choice D is wrong. Choice E. Choice E is interesting, and I know that it's cut out over here, but for those of you who were confused between choices B and E, choice E uses and. So there is no causal relationship expressed in the sentence anymore, which was a very, very primary focus of the original sentence. Okay, so that is why choice E is wrong. So what's happening over here is choice E is grammatically correct. It's a completely different structure. In fact, it has a structure which appears to be more attractive because it has a much more simple structure. Diegetic music invokes and filmmakers use it often. It just seems a lot more straightforward, but it doesn't express that causality, and that is why choice E is wrong. Okay. All right. So what have we learned from this sentence? From this question, what we've learned is that in the meaning of the sentence, choice A was not clear. The author messed up while writing choice A. Okay, but whenever that happens, we should not move on to the other choices to find clues for what could be the correct choice. Okay, before we do that's the worst thing that you can do. Okay, what you need to do is instead you need to understand each and every part of the sentence and what role that each part plays, and then you put that together in a logical manner and understand what the author intended to communicate. Till the time you don't have that level of understanding, you should not move ahead to the next steps. Why am I saying that? I'm saying that because the next steps are going to complicate issues. They are not, think about it, the author is not, the test maker is not, is the job of the test maker is not to make your life easy. The job of the test maker is to make sure that you can express, you can select the correct choice that communicates the right meaning. Okay, so what is important is that you understand what the author intends to communicate from the original choice by putting together the meanings that you have understood of the different parts of that sentence. Once you have that, then you move on to error analysis. Error analysis should have become very straightforward because you would have already understood what's wrong with choice A. So error analysis step almost becomes like a non-existent step. And then you analyze each choice and you reject each choice or each incorrect answer choice on solid grounds. Okay. Now, one thing that I'll tell you is, what you'll notice is that I'm not really talking a whole lot about grammar rules. Okay. And you may say, okay, you might get away with that just because of the choice of questions that you have in this session. Okay. That's not really the case. The thing over here is meaning is very, very important, and so is grammar. Okay, I'm not saying that grammar is not important. Grammar, in fact, is a tool to communicate meaning. Okay, I really cannot keep grammar separate from meaning. Okay, but the thing is that grammar is a means to the end. And what is the end? The end is to communicate the meaning. Now, what I don't want you guys to do, and what a number of you end up doing, is you let the grammar become the end. Okay, so read this slide, because this slide captures the essence of this whole meaning-based approach, and what is it that I mean by the whole meaning-based approach. I'm not saying that grammar is not important. What I'm saying is, don't give grammar that much more importance that you lose sight of the meaning. Understand what is the role of grammar. Role of grammar is to communicate meaning, whether it's grammar in English, whether it's grammar in Hindi, whether it's grammar in Spanish, whether it's grammar in French. Grammar is a set of rules that have been put together such that anyone who's speaking that language can use that common set of rules to communicate meaning. The ultimate thing is that you have to communicate meaning. That's the role of language, to communicate meaning, right? So it's very important that you focus on that. Okay. Now, if you think about it, when I was reading sentences, I was focusing on the understanding of meaning based on the role that the entity plays. And those, so again, the author has to put together a sentence and grammatically using the standard set of grammar rules. Okay. So again, it's important to understand grammar, but the main thing is you should learn grammar so that you know how English language is used to express meaning. Ultimately, it's the meaning that's the key. Okay. Now I have a question here. B and E had a very minute difference. It's hard to spot the same in real time. If yes, B and E, there was a very minute difference. However, that minute difference was actually a big difference from the standpoint of what the sentence stands for. The sentence presented a cause and effect, right? That was the high level of the sentence. For example, in the previous sentence, the wolf population, the sentence presented a contrast. So at that high level, you understood that the sentence needs to present a causal relationship. So make sure when you're reading the choices, that high level meaning is communicated. And that's what, even though there was a shift, there was a change of just a single word, and that to a very small word because was changed to and, it had a huge difference from the overall meaning of the sentence. So from the difference standpoint, it was a pretty big difference. Okay. All right. So now let's shift our focus from the question level to just understanding why is it that people falter in sentence correction. Because remember, for whenever you have to solve a problem, you have to understand the root cause behind that problem, right? So let's understand why is it that people falter in SE, and I'm going to walk you through a certain thought process of a student, and then I want you to tell me how many of you have faced that problem when you have solved SE questions. So a student looks at a question, she doesn't spend that much time on choice A to understand the meaning. So she moves on to the answer choices without really having a very solid basis to find the correct answer. In fact, what she ends up doing is she ends up looking at the answer choices to find clues. She thinks that the answer choices are going to help her select the answer. Okay. She ends up doing significant back and forth amongst choices, right? One answer choice looks attractive. She goes back to the question, analyzes that. So there's a lot of back and forth. Confusion sets in, frustration sets in, and she ends up making mistakes that could very well have been avoided. Okay. How many of you have gone through that? An overwhelming majority, almost everyone in the class has gone through that. Okay. And this is not how it should be, right? It ends up happening this way because you don't spend enough time on choice A. This is the primary culprit. You feel as if you are rushing to get to the correct answer. You feel as if grammar is the way to get to the correct answer. You feel that the answer choices are going to give you the clues. Because you have those misconceptions, you end up losing sight of the most important step, which is to spend the right amount of time on choice A to understand what the choice intends to communicate, and to do error analysis on choice A. So, what is the optimum approach? We've understood what is not working. Why is it not working? Now, what should work? The optimum approach to SC is you read the original sentence to understand the meaning. You understand the roles played by each entity. Okay. Step number 2, identify major errors in choice A. I'm not talking about those nuanced grammatical errors. I'm talking about major errors, things that are really shouting at you that, look, this is wrong. Okay, things that are really jumping out from the choice. So identify those major errors. And this becomes a cakewalk if you understand the meaning of the sentence. Okay, so this really becomes very easy if you've done step 1 properly. Only after you do steps 1 and 2, you go to the answer choices. And at that point in time as well, you analyze each of the remaining 4 answer choices in the light of what you've done on choice A, right? So I want you to flip the whole thing. I don't want you to take help from the 4 answer choices to figure out what the correct answer choice is. I want you to take help from choice A to figure out, with the aim to reject the incorrect answer choices and select the correct choice. So you need to flip the whole thing. As soon as you flip it, you will realize that sentence correction is very enjoyable, is very easy to master. Okay. So what's the optimum approach, as you can see over here, requires that you spend time on step 1 and step 2, and both of these steps are done on choice A. Only the last step is done on the remaining 4 choices. And this is why I say that you should spend more than 60% of your time on choice A, okay, to understand its meaning and hence the errors. And I cannot emphasize on this more. I mean, I can go on and on saying the same thing over and over again till the time it gets embedded in your head, but this is the most important thing. Okay. Now comes the question, how do I get to 45 to 60 seconds per question? Okay, how can I do that if I have to spend so much time in understanding the meaning, in figuring out the errors, and inferring the logical meaning? How these two things seem like a paradox. Okay, and I completely agree with you. At this point, they do seem like a paradox. But believe me, initially it is going to take time. But if you follow this approach in the right manner, using the right tools, you will be able to get to that point wherein you can solve essay questions accurately. And I'm not talking about easy questions, I'm talking about difficult questions. Because if you have that goal of getting to 90 percentile ability in SC, you need to be able to solve difficult questions accurately all the time. Okay, so you will be able to do that if you follow this approach using the right kind of tools. Okay, now what are these tools? And what are the things that you absolutely need to do? You need to learn how to read a sentence. Okay, it's very, very important. How to read slowly and pause appropriately, because that's the key, right? So mastering that comprehension is the key. And then you also need to have that knowledge of variety of sentence structures, right? GMAT throws multiple structures at you. So you need to know what are the acceptable norms. You need to have a lot of practice on that. Okay. So how can you do that? Okay. The first thing is you have to study methodically, right? So the first step that you have to follow is that you need to learn the effective way to read the sentence to understand its meaning. And for that, we've created this beautiful master comprehension course in which you will learn how to read the sentence so that the meaning is clear in your head in the first read itself. Okay, very short course, but it's a very, very effective course, and that's a course which is a foundation course for entire verbal section. Okay, all right, so that's the first thing. The second thing that you need to do is you need to understand that you know the grammar rules. It's very important for you to know what are the acceptable norms in English language. Okay, for example, you need to know how do pronouns work. You need to know the acceptable uses of verb ing words. You need to understand the difference between like and as. You need to understand the logical parallelness. Okay, so all of these things you need to know in order for you to be able to solve SC questions in the correct manner. And I'll explain how can you learn all these things, and how can you put together what should be the sequence of attack over here so that you can get to the 90 percentile ability. And that's the focus of the last part of this webinar. Okay, but before we get there, I want you to try another question, and this is the last question I believe of this session. So let's try our hand on this last question. And this one is also difficult, but this one is a little different from the previous one, because in this we have a shorter underlined portion. And many a time students feel like, okay, how many of you feel that a completely underlined sentence is more difficult than a partially underlined sentence? Okay, a number of you feel this way. In fact, I would actually say the opposite. In my experience, a partially underlined sentence is more difficult than a completely underlined sentence. But that's only possible, and I'm making that so that assertion is possible only because I follow the meaning-based approach, right? And when a sentence is completely underlined, as long as I have good understanding of what is the role played by each and every entity, it's very easy for me to figure out the correct choices and the correct choice from the incorrect answer choices. But that becomes slightly complicated when you have a partially underlined sentence, because there's a lot more that's happening in that small portion of the sentence. But that's also where the meaning-based approach comes in very, very handy. It's very effective. So I want to show you that approach in a partially underlined sentence as well, so that you don't have any concerns about where all this approach can be applied. Okay, so let's get to it. Let's get to more people selecting selecting still solving. I have about 180 people in the session right now. Let's get that number to about 90, let's say. This is the last question of this webinar, so put your energy together and let's cruise through this one as well. All right, here it goes. Last 10 seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. So 54% of the class has selected choice C as the correct answer, and choice C is indeed the correct answer. So what's your experience with this question? What's the feeling after answering this question? Meaning and parallelism, good. C and D, confusion. Chose C but was not effective, was not very confident. Meaning and checking the contrast is important. Why not D? Parallelism. Okay. B and C, confusion. Okay. Meaning helped. All right, that sounds good. Meaning approach actually helped. Okay. For how many of you meaning approach helped? Good. Very nice. Now, how many of you who are selecting yes would have solved this question in a different manner before this session? Okay, good, very nice. I'm glad to see that. That it's you're now applying a new approach which is actually helping you to answer questions. So that is really good. Okay, so let's get into this question now. We'll solve this question. Again, the first and the foremost step is to understand the meaning of this sentence. Delivery drones, unlike conventional modes of transport. So delivery drones, then there's a comparison that is stated, unlike the conventional modes of transport, ship goods. Okay, so they that's an action over here. They ship goods without becoming carbon intensive. So they don't become carbon intensive. They ship goods and they don't become carbon intensive with their ability to run on batteries. Now, what is the role of with their ability to run on batteries? What do you think that is telling you? With their ability to run on batteries. What is it giving the reason for? Exactly, it is describing how come delivery drones do not become carbon intensive. Okay, it's describing that. Now, would you think that this part has been written correctly with their ability to run on batteries? If its role is to describe why delivery drones do not end up becoming carbon intensive, has that role been expressed appropriately by using this structure? No, it is not. Okay. Now, I'll ask you another question. Can you pinpoint exactly what is the grammatical error here? I mean, all of you were able to, a number of you were able to tell that it's not written correctly, right? But can you pinpoint exactly why it's not correct? The exact grammar rule as to why it's not correct. Yes or no? And if you can, tell me what is that grammar rule? Without and with are very wordy, no. Misplaced modifier, no. With their ability to run on batteries. No, but the main thing over here is the with is not showing causal. Absolutely right, but that is not a grammar rule. That's a logical based rule. Absolutely right. With is not showing causality, but that aspect is arriving from the meaning aspect of it. Again, what I'm trying to tell you is you are not going to be quizzed eh, when you select a particular answer choice. They are not checking whether you know all the nuances and grammar or not. All they are checking is, can you identify a correct answer choice which is logically correct and which is written in grammatically correct English, right? So the whole point of my asking you this question is that it's important for you to understand that it's a lot easier to identify issues with meaning rather than pinpointing those nuanced grammar aspects. Okay, so over here with is not able to show causality properly, right? But the role of this part is to show cause, right? So you understood that meaning, and then you are figuring out whether it's been used, whether it's been expressed appropriately or not. Okay, so let's read further. Sorry for digressing here, but it's important to identify, how meaning is so much more, uh, how you will be in so much more control if you focus on the meaning aspects of the sentence. Okay. All right. So we know till this point that ship goods without becoming carbon intensive with their ability to run on batteries, efficiently covering short distances. What's the role of efficiently covering short distances? Efficiently covering short distances is presenting the result of running on batteries. Absolutely right. That because it runs on battery, it can efficiently cover short distances. Absolutely right. However, now there is a contrast here. However, their ability, now whose ability? Drone's ability, DD's ability, inability to cover long distances may hinder their popularity in the transportation industry, right? So because they are not able to cover long distances, this aspect may hinder their popularity in transportation industry. Okay, so really speaking, this sentence at a very high level, the sentence presents a contrast. What is a contrast? The fact one is that these positive feature of DD, less carbon footprint, they are efficient for short distances. Fact number two is because they cannot cover long distances, they may not get popular. Okay, how many of you got this level of meaning clarity when you read the sentence on your own? Good, a number of you did that. Good. Now, one more thing that I want to point out is look at the fact that, again, I know there are lots of squiggly lines here on the screen, but look at the fact that I didn't focus my attention only on the underlined portion. In fact, when I presented the slide, I didn't know what the underlined portion is. Okay. And that's something which all of you need to keep in mind. Just because a small portion is underlined doesn't mean that you don't need to read the entire sentence. When you're doing step one, you have to read the entire sentence. You have to understand the meaning of the entire sentence from start to end. Okay. You cannot just focus on the small part of the sentence that's underlined. Okay. Very, very important. But in step two, you should consider the underlined portion only because you know that the errors are only limited to that part of the sentence. Okay. But you still need to keep in, you need to understand because you've already understood the meaning. So the aspects of the non-underlined portion should already be incorporated. Okay. Now in this choice, the only thing that's wrong over here is with their ability to run on batteries. Why? Because this doesn't explain the why aspect of it. Okay. With word doesn't explain the why aspect of it. That's why it's wrong. Okay. So it's the inappropriate expression. Okay. Now, one thing that I would point your attention towards is that you see all those these seven high level grammatical errors. Okay, subject, verb, pronouns, modifiers, parallelism, idiom. Other is basically sentence structure related issues, etc. Right. So it's very important for you to keep this as a tally sheet on your scratch paper so that as you read the sentence, you tick mark the stuff which you feel is absolutely okay. Right now, I'm not so once you go through the application files in the course, you will see how we go through each and every error one at a time and make sure that you are tick marking each and every high level category and making sure that the sentence is absolutely correct from that standpoint. Okay, but as you practice this, again, this I'm not saying that you need to do that all the time. As you practice this process will become so intuitive that you won't even need to worry about this tally sheet. Okay. All right. So now let's take a look at the answer choices. Choice B. Ship goods without becoming carbon intensive running on batteries. Now, the Y aspect has been converted into a result. Verb ing. This is where I apply my grammar knowledge. Verb ing modifier expresses result, right? Or describes the previous clause. Now over here we know that running on batteries should have explained why they become carbon intensive. It cannot really represent the result of becoming carbon intensive. So this choice is wrong. Now, thus efficiently cover is absolutely correct. It's just another way to express the result. Okay, so this part is correct, but this Y aspect is wrong here in choice B. Choice C, absolutely correct. Because they run on battery, the correct expression has been used, and thus efficiently cover. Again, this is correct because it's still presenting the result. Choice D, can ship goods. Now, can changes the meaning. In the original choice, the author said that these ship goods, there was that certainty, deterministic, that these actually ship goods without becoming carbon intensive. Choice D, on the other hand, is saying that these have the ability to ship goods, and that changes the meaning. Okay. Um, they run on batteries to efficiently cover. The other issue over here is that the intent has now it's saying that they run on batteries with an intent to cover short distances. Now that wasn't the intent. That was just the reason why they are not carbon intensive, right? So this changes the meaning from the original choice. Okay, so this part is wrong. Choice E is also wrong because of the same issue, may ship goods. So again, it's changed into possibility, and then there's the issues with due to and covering. Okay, so if you think about it, because I focused so much on the meaning aspect, when the turn came to eliminate answer choices, it was so very easy for me to eliminate answer choices. I wasn't really questioning one grammar rule against these answer choices. No, it was just a very logical way for me to arrive at the correct answer choice. So at a very high level, the learnings from this question are that even though a small portion is underlined, you need to read the entire sentence. Okay, but the good thing is, when you are focusing on the error analysis, you should focus more on the underlined portion because that's where the errors are. But at the same time, you should not lose sight of what's there in the non-underlined portion. Okay. Now we come to the last part of this session, which is how do you get to that 90 percentile ability? Okay. So there are three things that you have to learn in order to get to 90 percentile ability. You need to learn how to read effectively. Okay, that's the foundation skill that you have to absolutely build. For this, we have this specialized course, as I mentioned earlier, called Master Comprehension, in which we teach you how a sentence is formed, and I'm going to show it to you in detail. Okay. The second thing that you have to do is once you've learned how to read the sentence properly to understand its meaning, the second thing that you have to do is you have to master all the grammar rules that you are required to know in order to solve SC questions correctly. For this, we have the e-GMAT SC course. The last thing that you need to do is to evaluate and iterate. As Rajat explained initially, you need to be able to uh, understand where you're faltering and then improve upon that, and then test yourself again. That evaluation and iteration is very important. That's what a private tutor does when he or she works with you. Okay, for this we have Scholaranium as a tool that has been developed for you. So essentially, specialized tool for each and every purpose of the things that you need to do in order to get to that 90 percentile ability. Let's look at master comprehension. How does master comprehension help? How has master comprehension course been created in order for you to learn how to read effectively? The first module over here is building blocks of a sentence. How are long sentences formed? Okay. How do you deconstruct long sentences? Okay. So all of these aspects have been taught to you over here. Then we basically teach you where do you pause? How do you decide where to pause in a long sentence? Okay. And how do you understand the meaning from the portion? How do you link that meaning with the others, with the portion of the other sentence? We call these points as strategic points. So we teach you the strategic points in pause points. Okay. Frankly speaking, in fewer than 2 hours, you can go from a flat reader to someone who reads with a purpose. Okay, and there are no tricks involved here. We are simply teaching you how long sentences are constructed, and we are telling you, okay, how you can utilize that writing philosophy in your reading philosophy. Okay, and it's not just impactful for non-natives, that is people who have not studied in US, Canada, or Australia. This method also helps natives become more purposeful readers. Marcos, a native speaker, benefited immensely from master comprehension. Now, because he's a native speaker, he was able to understand most of GMAT sentences, but because of the extremely formal nature of the language, comprehending what he read took a lot of time. But once he went through the master comprehension course, he understood the role played by each and every snippet of a sentence, and he experienced an amazing improvement in his reading speed. And this improvement had a huge impact on his SC and RC ability. The thing that's very important to understand is how, if you build your foundation, if the other pieces of the puzzle are already put in place, you can see such great improvements. The whole thing with preparing for GMAT is that you need to realize what are those pieces of the puzzle and how do you put those puzzle pieces together to get to your target abilities in each and every subsection. Okay, foundation skills are critically important. Okay, let's come back to the second part now, which is master GMAT grammar, right? So we're going to talk about the e-GMAT SC course. And in this, what I'm going to explain to you is how do you personalize your learning through the e-GMAT SC course and Scholaranium, okay? And one thing that I want all of you to understand is you cannot get to greater than 90 percentile by just studying. You need to focus on perfecting. And I want you to write this down on your scratch pad today. Okay. It's important for you to understand that getting to that 90 percentile ability is all about iterating in the right manner. Okay. Now, how can you iterate? Let's look at that. But first, we need to understand how do you tie it all together using the process, using the insights, and the personalization. The first and the foremost thing is process. You need to have a very solid process of approaching a problem. Okay. For this, you need to understand what all are the concepts that are required. How do you apply those concepts to solve the questions? And how do you make sure that you reach that level of mastery in the process? Okay. That's the first pillar of your success, understanding the process. Okay. The second pillar is getting insights. Now, it's not just important that we teach you these approaches. We have to make sure that you actually learn. And that's where the feedback that we provide comes in. We have built specialized technology in our video files to make sure that these files provide feedback with every concept file, with every application file. So basically, every 15 minutes that you spend on the system, you get a feedback. You get to know how well you're doing. You get to know what else do you need to do. Okay. The last part over here, which is very, very important, is personalization. Okay, as I said, no one gets to 90 percentile in the first go. To get there, you need to isolate and focus on areas that need effort, and you need to relentlessly improve upon those. Essentially, every student at e-GMAT carves his or her own unique journey to ace the GMAT, and that's where the insights from skill data section, which outline where to focus your energy on, and our custom quiz engine, which helps you confirm that you've actually improved, comes in handy. Okay, so on the next slide, I'm going to tell you how all of this works in SC course, and I'm going to take an example of verbs module. Okay, so the entire e-GMAT course has 10 modules, and what you're going to see next is just 1/10 of the whole course. Okay, so what you see first is how comprehensive the module is. Now, the first three files here, verb tenses 1, verb tenses 2, and verb sequencing, teach you the foundation concepts in verbs and tenses. Everything from simple present tense to future perfect tense is taught here. Each file has specialized quizzes that give you feedback based on how you do, based on your conceptual knowledge, very similar to what a private tutor will do. Okay, all of these quizzes are scored and you get insights on how well you've understood this concept, and this feedback is for you. So now, looking at this feedback that has been provided, what are you going to infer about how this student has learned the concepts? What's the inference that you're going to draw? He scored 67% in verb sequencing file. So what do you think about that? Absolutely right. There is a conceptual gap. Now, what do you think is going to happen if he carries on with the application file, which is based on these three concept files? What is going to happen? You've recognized that there is a conceptual gap. What is going to happen when he attempts the verb application file? This is what happens. He scores poorly in that. The gap continues. Right? Now, let's see what happens further. He carries on. He goes through the next set of concept files over here. Now, how would you rate his performance on the next set of concept files? He still has gaps, right? He hasn't scored very well. So the system is telling you how you are doing, right? So you have all the information. You have to make this student has to really make that judgment call as to how to utilize that information in order to get on the path towards that 90 percentile ability. Okay, now look at what happens. Verb practice file is the culmination file in this thing, in which you solve SC like questions. I mean, you solve similar questions that you have in the application file, and look at his score over here, 60%. Okay, frankly speaking, this score is nothing surprising. He scored poorly because he did not take the insights from the course as he was going through the module. Okay, but that's absolutely fine. Now that he has gone through the verbs practice file, he can take a look at all the scores and see, okay, how can he improve upon verbs? So clearly, he needs to spend more time on this file, verb sequencing, and he needs to understand the conditional verb, because these are the two gaps, conceptual gaps, that he has. Once he bridges those conceptual gaps, he needs to spend time on the verbs application file to make sure that he understands where he made mistakes and why he made mistakes. And these application files are so very well detailed that you can identify each and every mistake that you made while solving the question on your own. It basically tells you the mistakes in your thought process. Okay, that's the beauty of these application files. So, long story short, by just focusing on these small points, this student can go from 60 percentile ability to 90 percentile ability in just 1 hour. And again, we are talking about verb tenses. Imagine if you are able to do this for not just verb tenses, for each and every high level type of errors that are tested on SC. Imagine as soon as you finish a C course, you are at that point wherein you feel so confident that you can get to that high percentile level in SC. Now, as I said, you have to iterate over here, right? Once you go through this, once you finish up the course, you then take up Scholaranium and you take ability quizzes in Scholaranium. You figure out, okay, what your weak areas are from the skill data that you get in Scholaranium, and then you come back to the course and you work on those weak areas. So the feedback that you get from the platform based on how you are interacting with the platform is so very crucial to your preparation, and that's what makes the e-GMAT course so very efficient and effective in making sure that you get to your score in the optimum amount of time. Because ultimately, You are managing so many different things, right? GMAT cannot become a long drawn process. It should not become a long drawn process. So you need to have a course that can help you get to your target GMAT score in an optimum amount of time that works well for you. Okay. Let's look at Ria's story. Ria thought that her SC was very good, but she faltered in SC big time. Then she purchased Verbal online and she did the SC course diligently. She looked at her data in the course dashboard and in Scholarium, and she focused selectively on certain areas and was finally able to score 99 percentile in sentence correction. Frankly, this is one of the many examples of students who go from nowhere to acing GMAT SC as well as other sections of the GMAT. While their starting points are different, they take different times to prepare, but the thing that is common among all the students is that they apply the methods that are taught in the course and they leverage Scholarium data to isolate areas of weakness and they work on fixing those weaknesses. To end this session, what I'd like to say is, I understand that putting effort to ace the GMAT requires sacrifices. But it's these sacrifices that take us to the next level in our life, just as they did for Nishant or for Mansi, who got admits from Harvard, Stanford, Kellogg, Wharton, or for Samya or for Ria. You cannot get to 90 percentile by just studying. You need to focus on perfecting. And I look forward to seeing your interviews over here as success stories. It's really important that you study in the right manner, you achieve what you set out to achieve, and then you celebrate that success. All right, so with this, we've come to the end of the second part of this webinar as well. I would love to get your feedback, so it would be great if you could provide your feedback over here. What you liked in the session, how was it? What did you learn from the session? That's very, very important. How is that going to change your approach towards preparing for SC? So if you could put in your comments over here as well, your ratings over here, that would be very nice, and thank you. Very nice. Importance of understanding the meaning. Very nice. Thank you for being a verbal student. That's very nice. All right, so let me invite Rajat back into the session so that he can take any questions that you may have. Thank you for that feedback from your side. You've taken courses with Mukush and Veritas Prep, and this by far is the most comprehensive course you've taken. I appreciate your feedback here. Any plans for CR and RC webinars? Definitely yes. We conduct these webinars every Saturday. For verbal and quant, we conduct these webinars on every Sunday. So tomorrow, in fact, I would be conducting a webinar on number properties. So definitely come and attend that webinar as well. For RC, again, I'll have to check the schedule, but we conduct these webinars every weekend. So Sandeep, if you can, let me share the schedule over here. Let me bring about the files. Just give me 1 second here. Files here, yeah. So here's the calendar. So take a look at that. All right, so any questions that you may have, please put them in the Q&A pod here so that when Rajat comes in, he can address those questions. Let me read through some of the comments. Never took the option A seriously, but from now on it will be hard-coded in my mind. I am so glad that you made that statement. That really makes my day, and my day just started. So really very nice. From scattered approach to concentrated approach, amazing. So I wish you all the very best. Focus, prepare in the right manner. GMAT is a very logical test, and all of us are very logical people. So, as long as you focus on the logic aspect of the test, there is no reason why you cannot improve in GMAT, why you cannot get to that 90 percentile and get to that, get onto your path to your dream school and realize your dreams. All right, all the very best, and let us know how we can help you in your GMAT journey. And over to Rajat now.
All right, guys, with that, we are now in the third part of the webinar, which is the open-ended Q&A. Let me share the session presentation with you. Has a session presentation. I'm also going to share the batch calendars, which are on the top right-hand corner as well. Okay, with that, if you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to respond to those questions. Okay, Soumya says, I was going through the manner in which illustration that to be approached. I've already attempted all the OG quizzes. What am I supposed to practice now? So, good question. A lot of people actually are in the same boat as you are in. So, on the e-GMAT course, the questions that we provide are not the same as official questions. So, you'd have ample practice over there. So, for example, just in sentence correction, we provide a total of close to 450 uh, full-length e-GMAT questions, and these, in addition to another 200 to 300 questions which are more concept based. So you have ample practice over there with Scholaranium as well as the GMAT practice quizzes and application files. The other piece which is there is, even though you may have done the official guide, you need to do it well. That's why you're actually here taking up a prep course, and in that case, make sure when you approach the question, do it using the meaning-based approach in sentence correction or the pre-thinking approach in critical reasoning. Okay, so hopefully that helps, Soumya. Let's look at the next one. Anisha says, my past official uh, uh, mock tests were in the order V42, V37, V42. How do I get more reliable and less volatile results? Um, Anisha, the way you need to make sure that when you get to that V42, which is 94 percentile, if I recall correctly, or 96, is make sure when you take a mock test, you revise all the sections properly, because when you are at that 96 percentile, a couple of mistakes will pull you down. So I think you are in that zone. It's just that your free 37 attempt was an attempt in which you probably weren't as well prepared for verbal. You didn't revise. So that's why you probably made a couple of mistakes that you should not have given your ability. So that's all that I would really say. Just uh, a couple of days before the exam, make sure you go through the mistakes. You revise all sections of verbal. Practice 10 to 15 questions in each section, and that way your mind's more attuned to what to expect. If you have OG 2016 and OG Verbal Quant 2019, how do you do the OG quiz? We expect you to really get OG 2018 or 2019. I mean, I can't do anything else around that. It's just the latest official guides are the best representation of the kind of questions to expect. Kakali says, I have a question in regards to personalized study plan. I love the milestones. I've noticed the milestones do not have official dates. Well, they actually have time spans where they say, hey, 1.2 weeks, and essentially that, and then you have the starting and the ending date of all the milestones combined. The feedback that you're given is a good feedback. We can incorporate that in future versions. But I think if you do a bit of math, you should be, 1.2 weeks is about 9 days or so. You should be able to add those milestones. Also, when you look at the calendar view overall, you're going to really see the exact dates when a course starts and when a course ends. So you're going to really see that in the calendar view as well. How should you utilize those milestones? These are the milestones that you should aim for if you want to get to your target GMAT score. So if your required milestone in critical reasoning, let's say, is 80 percentile, then after going through the CR course, make sure that you hit 80 percentile in a CR ability quiz. What's the best target score for an Indian getting into a top 15B school with scholarship? I would say 750 or higher is what I would recommend. Let me actually send you some success stories overall. If you take a look at this article, Varun says, I'm a working individual, time is a devil. My goal is to appear for the test in 6 to 8 months. What should be the good approach? Online course, self-study? Varun, I think regardless of this, the first thing you need to do is make sure you define a time interval when you want to study, and you stick to that time interval. It's really important that you look at this and you really say, okay, I'm going to study from 6 to 8 in the evening or 8 to 10 in the evening, um, and so on and so forth. So 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 and once you have a time interval defined in a day and an estimate of the number of hours you can study reliably, uh, uh, and let me actually share. Then you can really decide on either the an online course or basically the live course overall. Here is another article which says how do you balance work and study for the GMAT. How many days are required to ASSC? It depends on your starting ability and your target ability. So again, if you go through the personalized study planner, that'll tell you. So if you put in the starting ability, it'll give you an amazing estimate of how many days you would need. So let me just. Let me share the link with you. Here's the link. Again, EK, what's the best way to achieve the target score of 740 plus? Again, put in your specifics in PSP and you'd be able to get there. Anish says, really struggling with critical reasoning, unable to apply the pre-thinking approach in the time frame applicable. Anish, first of all, as I mentioned in my webinars, when you're learning pre-thinking, don't worry about time. I think I mentioned it about 5 times overall. So if you're still learning the pre-thinking approach, focus on getting all the steps right, focus on understanding the conclusion, focus on understanding the logical structure, and then pre-think. When you do that for about 20 to 25 questions diligently, your timing will start to come in place. There are a couple of reasons. So for 80% of the people, that starts to happen. For a few folks, that when it doesn't happen is when you don't have the specifics in place, which means you've not gone through the premise and conclusion files. You don't know how to read statements, and hence you're not able to infer the information from the conclusion. But if your foundation is right, and if you spend 20 or so, if you solve 20 or so arguments using pre-thinking without timing yourself, you'd see the timing will fall in place. GMAT score required for ISP. I've seen people get into ISP with a 710, and I've seen people who have a 750 that's rejected. So, I mean, a score which I would say is a safe score where where they won't reject you for your GMAT score is probably a 720 score. Um, Soumya says, I'm a communications trainer for college students. I can't really specify achievements in my work X. Why can't you? If you're a college trainer for, if you're a communications trainer for college students, how many students have you trained? What have they achieved? Have you changed the process of how the training happens? Have you made the training more efficient? So essentially, all of that are excellent points on which you can define achievements. I mean, you have a very interesting job if you're a communications trainer for college students. Stanford, Wharton, MIT, Sloan for an Indian student. Again, as I really say, just your GMAT score doesn't help you get there. You should also have a comparable profile. But typically, I've seen students get into Wharton, MIT, or Stanford with 750 or higher scores. Chetan says, how is Teach for India Fellowship considered as experience in B schools? Uh, it's not considered, I mean, just a brand is not any use. I will tell you whether it's Teach for India or Google or Apple over there. The question really is, what have you done over there? So I've seen people who've been at Teach for India for a year and have not done something. I've seen people who've been there for a couple of years. They lead the district efforts, and they've actually made a difference. And if made a difference, and if we have a story to tell around it, then essentially that is really valuable. And so that's kind of what I would say. It's your experiences, it's your stories around what you have achieved or how you have made a difference that matters. Who can be your recommenders? I mean, if you train college students, then the college faculty can be your recommenders. People who've employed you overall, they'll be your recommenders. Can we do a 2-week crash course to improve your results? Yes, you can. Again, you need to spend the time and essentially, let me just share a success story of a student who actually improved in 1 week. He's a very old student. If here is it should be appearing on your screens. Again, he improved from a V27 to V36 in a week. He studied full time, actually 5 days. I shouldn't even say a week. Is it impossible to get into a top B school with a 650? It's not impossible. I mean, there are people who get into Harvard with a 600, but those people typically have amazing achievements behind them. Some of them actually are basic uh, uh, they basically are heirs to dynasties. So think of Prince of Saudi Arabia and all of those guys. Those guys were in the 600 or so. But again, or people who've run successful companies and who on startups, and then B schools understand that those guys have the caliber and they don't have the time to prepare for GMAT. But if you're a regular person, then getting into an Ivy League or one of the top 10 schools with a 650 is going to be very challenging. When will the next batch start? We start a batch every 2 weeks. The next batch should be on the 16th. Again, remember, when you purchase a course, you get access for 6 months, and whether that's a live course or an online course. And so if you join today's batch, if you're unable to attend it, you're welcome to start the batch, join the batch starting on 16th or the batch starting on the 30th of March. Can any of your clients for whom you worked onshore give you recommendations? Yes, if you've worked with that client for 6 months or longer, they can. If they've seen your work and are qualified to pass judgment on the qualities that you bring along, whether it's leadership, technical, managerial, and so on and so forth. So definitely they can. All right, guys, with that, I want to thank everyone for attending this webinar. It was a pleasure conducting this webinar. If you still have questions, do write to me at rajat@e-gmat.com, or you can write to pile@e-gmat.com. And again, for those of you who want to know whether you need to upgrade to live sessions or not, again, we have a very flexible upgrade downgrade policy. If you feel you need the live sessions, feel free to upgrade, and then a couple of sessions down the line, if you feel, hey, this is not working out, let us know. Um, is social work mandatory to get into a good B school? Absolutely not. No, it's not mandatory. I mean, let me let me actually share a success story of a student who's gotten into top 5 B schools, and this particular student has no social work. So here's the link. So she has no social work. She basically is just someone who's delivered high quality results all throughout her career. So yeah, no, social work isn't necessary. Again, what social work provides is an evidence of leadership. That's one domain in which you can provide evidence of leadership. But I mean, there are plenty of other domains where you can have evidence of leadership. Did I share the story of a student who's improved in a couple of weeks? Yes, I did. Let me share this again. So here's a guy who's improved in a couple of weeks, or was improved in 1 week, actually. But again, the thing that you have to do is go to PSP, put in the starting and ending score that you desire, and it'll tell you the amount of number of hours required. And if you put in more hours per day, you'd be able to really figure out a study plan that allows you to get to your target score in a couple of weeks. And there are plenty of such students who've done this, frankly. So if you go to our testimonials, there's a page of where people have improved in fewer than 30 days. You can really look at that over here as well. And this data is 2-3 years old, but again, you'll see the relevant examples. You'll see the kind of improvement that people have attained. You do need to put in the hours, I will tell you that. Okay, guys, with that, thank you very much. It was wonderful conducting this webinar, and I hope to see you in the number properties webinar tomorrow.